answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I'll be with you all the way to 10 o'clock. Stand by for 3 hours of news, views and dynamic debate. Get stuck in, get on the show, get on the phone and call me on 03444991000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. It is Wednesday, May the 21st. Here's what's coming up. Extraordinary scenes on the English Channel as a flotilla of 66 boats commemorating the legendary World War II Dunkirk evacuation is ordered to disperse so that the border control can escort a migrant's dinghy into the British coast. This shocking chaos unfolded amid, check this out, the biggest day of the year. This is today, as an estimated record 820 illegal foreigners poured across the Channel from France, beating the previous high of 705 who made the dangerous voyage on April the 15th. What a mess. What is our useless Prime Minister doing about this escalating shambles, droning on about smashing the gangs while not smashing a single gang? This is a disgrace. Your thoughts? 03444991000. Also, tonight we'll kick off in just a few minutes with the sad case of jailed for a tweet mum, Lucy Connolly, after her appeal against her grotesquely disproportionate 31-month sentence was summarily rejected. Appeal Court Judge Lord Justice Holroyd insisting that her gigantic jail term for posting a few hurty words on Twitter amid the summer riots could not be considered, and I quote, manifestly excessive. What a load of rubbish. Of course it could be considered manifestly excessive. In fact, it is manifestly excessive. Obviously, indeed it is. But this guy, Holroyd, has a track record of being a lot more lenient towards serious sex offenders. Apparently very happy to cut their sentences. Stay tuned to find out all about this scion of two-tier justice. This is all wrong, isn't it? 03444991000. Plus, more on the full horror of Starmer's Brexit betrayal after the sellout, the fallout. And as for our shape-shifting leaders' humiliating U-turn on the winter fuel allowance today in the House of Commons, Just how much of a U-turn is it really? It's just an announcement. Headline hunting again. Let's see if anything actually happens. It probably won't. 03444991000. In other news, the BBC's continuing pathetic efforts to retrieve the £200,000 it paid its in-house paedophile Hugh Edwards after he was charged with child sex abuse crimes. Revealed in desperate emails from executives begging the state broadcaster's former chief news anchor to return the cash. But he won't. Why don't they just sue him? And why, by the way, isn't this guy in jail? If Lucy Connolly is in jail for writing a nasty tweet, why isn't Hugh Edwards in jail for sexually abusing children? Two-tier justice? What is wrong with this picture? 03444991000. Not forgetting the extraordinary bust-up at the White House just now as Donald Trump ambushed South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in the Oval Office with a video and accusations of genocide against white farmers. And finally, way to sack Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy. Axed her entire department. Ms Nandy is said to be for the chop as part of the cost-cutting bid to streamline the civil service. They're going to get rid of the entire ministry, the entire culture, media and sport ministry, they say. Lisa Nandy, is also, we're told, considered to be a tad on the lazy side. She, of course, denies this, but are Lisa's days numbered? All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Wednesday night together. And after that furious rant, who better to share my rage than Talk's brilliant international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome, Isabel.
Hi, you were actually making me laugh because you were just so energised by the whole thing. And you know what? It is so bad that in some ways, you've just got to laugh.
If you didn't laugh, you'd cry. If you didn't laugh, you'd cry. And,
yeah.
My big sort of personal debate over the last couple of hours is what to lead on, which story to do first.
No.
Because as I just revealed, it is emerging today that 820 migrants have come across the channel today. And as you just heard, while a flotilla of 66 small boats has set sail from Ramsgate towards Dunkirk to commemorate the famous World War II evacuation, a border patrol vessel go, get out the way, all of you disperse, we've got a migrant dinghy to come through. I mean, am I missing something? Are we getting our national priorities a bit wrong here? I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
You're not missing anything. And, you know, I was on Mike's show this morning, or maybe I was just listening to Mike's show. I think I was just listening. And, you know, there were a number of... There was one caller, I think she left a voice note, and she said she was literally spending quite a bit of time in tears about the state of our country. And you know what? I get that. You know, Mike says he's never heard people so angry. You know, you and he have been doing these shows for a very long time. And there is something now, a tipping point about the state of our nation. Yes. That I think is really, really apparent, don't you? You know, from the calls that we're getting, people are...
They're furious. I saw your tweet, and I share your emotions about this. You know, you and I, and Mike, we're all, you know, seasoned journalists. We're used to dealing with politicians, with people from all walks of life who you don't necessarily personally like all that much, but you don't tend to sort of put yourself into this. It's your profession, it's your job, you're objective about it. But you tweeted that you're really struggling to suppress your personal detestation of this Prime Minister, of Keir Starmer. And I share your feelings. There's something so incredibly dislikable about him, mainly because he's a shape-shifting snake oil salesman from whom you cannot trust a single word. This Brexit betrayal this week, absolutely outrageous. There's something unpleasant about this little man that goes above and beyond what we've encountered before, I think, in Westminster, and that's saying something.
I mean, I've reported on, I don't know, about 8 prime ministers or something ridiculous. I mean, most of them in the last year and a half. Um,
Yeah.
and I've never despised them. I mean, I've certainly sort of thought a few were better than others, and I've had my moments with Boris and Theresa May and so on. I've never felt, such a kind of visceral kind of despair, I suppose, at somebody leading our country who I don't trust anymore truly has the best interests of the majority of people at heart. I don't think he understands how people feel outside the metropolitan elite circles in which he moves.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And also, I mean, I would sort of sum up my feelings of a growing epic contempt, because I just think he is he's just fantastically incompetent, so hopeless. So let's discuss first Lucy Connolly. I decided to opt for Lucy Connolly's case first because I think there's something very serious to discuss here. Now, you remember a couple of weeks ago, her lovely husband Raymond, a Tory councillor in Northampton, came onto my show and told of his heartbreak. He's trying to bring up their 12-year-old daughter without their mum, and you would have thought after whatever it is, nearly 300 days behind bars, she should never have been behind bars in the first place, that the appeal court might have shown a bit of mercy. Instead, one of it's a panel of 3 appeal court judges, Lord Justice Holroyd, announced that her 31-month sentence must stand because there is no basis for an argument that this sentence could be considered manifestly excessive. That is a pile of crap. There is every argument to suggest that this court sentence was manifestly excessive. That is the whole point. Of course it was excessive. 31 months for a few nasty words on Twitter. Do me a favour. And yet she stays in prison. Now, this is what we've got to get through this fast. So I want to run you through the track record of Lord Justice Holroyd's performances over the past few years in the appeal court, whilst he showed no mercy, no leniency towards a young mum who has never done anything wrong before in her life, not so much as a speeding ticket, who lost her temper after the Southport killings because she lost her own child a year ago, and she sympathised with these mums, and she tweeted something that none of us condone, and she immediately regretted something about mass deportation now, set fire to them all. It was horrible. She knew it. She pulled it down. She's doing 31 months for that. That is grotesque. It is grotesque. He should have shown leniency. She was appealing against her awful sentence. Now, let's go through some of the other appeals that Lord Justice Holroyd has presided over. In fairness, appeal courts tend to be a panel of 3 judges. So he's always been a part of a panel of 3 judges, but he has presided over this case. In 2023, Lord Justice Holroyd was part of the Court of Appeal panel that reduced the sentence of former Labour peer Lord Nazir Ahmed. Ahmed was convicted in January 2022 of sexually abusing 2 children in the 1970s. One was a boy under the age of 11, who he tried to have an awful form of sex with, and the other was a girl who he sexually abused. Lord Justice Holroyd and his judge pals decided to reduce Lord Nazir Ahmed's sentence from 5.5 years to 2.5 years, and he was effectively released right away. So in effect, he released this guy. OK, so lot of leniency for that sex offender. Let's move on to Anthony Marsh and Lee Davis. Now, Anthony Marsh, a paedophile with HIV, had unprotected sex with underage boys. He was given a life sentence. This was quashed by Lord Justice Holroyd in the Court of Appeal and replaced with a 12-year term. His accomplice Lee Davis also had his minimum term reduced from 12.5 years to 8 years. So lots of mercy there shown by Lord Justice Holroyd. Number 3, Alan McCurry, sentence reduction, 2017. Former army sergeant convicted of raping a young girl and committing sex attacks on another, had his jail term reduced by 1 year by the Court of Appeal, including, of course, our friend Lord Justice Holroyd. And finally, last and certainly least, this is Matthew Folder. Matthew Folder, 2018, a Cambridge graduate, one of Britain's most prolific paedophiles. He had his 32-year sentence reduced to 25 years by the Court of Appeal, which included Lord Justice Holroyd. The Court of Appeal, Lord Justice Holroyd used his favourite phrase. When this guy Folder, a prolific paedophile, one of the worst in British history, was sentenced to 32 years. Guess what Lord Justice Holroyd called that sentence? Manifestly excessive. What is going on here? This guy, very happy to reduce the sentence, showing great mercy towards these disgusting sex offenders, but a woman who puts a few nasty words on Twitter, oh no, no mercy for her. Unbelievable.
It genuinely is unbelievable. This case absolutely sickens me. It is manifestly ridiculous and unjust that this woman, whose fleeting loss of self-control actually had no demonstrable impact on anyone or anything. At no point has the prosecution said that what she tweeted actually resulted in anyone doing anything bad. So for what is she being punished? You know, what purpose does it serve, her being behind bars? It makes no sense whatsoever. And, you know, all this human rights brigade that are so quick to use human rights as a grounds for not deporting vile foreign criminals who have done appalling things. What about Lucy Connolly's human rights? You know, seems every week an immigration tribunal judge lets some foreign criminal stay in the UK because if they were deported, their young child might suffer. Well, what about Lucy Connolly's 12-year-old daughter? And what about the right to free speech? All of this has gone out of the window. And the Liberal left remain shamefully silent on all of this.
Absolutely. And, you know, I've heard Dan Hodges, a columnist who I occasionally like and occasionally writes things I don't like, but he's capable of being extremely readable and extremely wise. But I heard him today, earlier on Ian Collins' show, saying, you know, these conspiracy theories going on about Keir Starmer's hands being all over these lengthy sentences for the rioters and the posters of saying, well, they've got no proof of this. This is absolute rubbish. Are you joking, Dan? Are you joking? You know, obviously the Prime Minister instructed the judiciary, I want those rioters in court within days and I want them in prison within a week. And guess what? It happened. In normal circumstances, Lucy Connolly would not even go near a court, let alone a prison. This was all down to the Prime Minister's bid to quell the riots with extremely hefty sentences. Many of them, as I said earlier, grotesquely disproportionate. About 385 people went to jail after those summer riots in the slipstream of that awful Southport horror. 12 of them went to jail for nasty, hurty words on Twitter, on Facebook. None of them should go to jail. No one in a Western democracy should go to jail for nasty words on social media. 31 months. That is obscene. It is obscene. It is a stain on British justice.
Let's not forget that one of those who went to jail, who didn't actually hurt anyone, is actually dead, having taken his own life behind bars, a despairing grandfather. This stuff is just so absolutely shameful on our country. And you know what? Yesterday, I'm sure our listeners clocked this. Keir Starmer stood in a supermarket aisle looking as blank-faced as ever and said that he wasn't familiar with the details of the Lucy Connolly case. Are you kidding me, Prime Minister?
Well,
Which bit of you has not bothered engaging with a case that has caused a national outcry. Either you're ignorant, lazy, or stupid, or perhaps you're all three.
Probably all three, but we played that footage last night, and I was with Rod Liddle at the time, and I said, well, I'll tell you what the Prime Minister is doing there, and I can define it technically. He is lying. That is a bare-faced lie. To stand there and say, oh, the Lucy Connolly case, no, I'm not across the details. Are you kidding me? That has been all over every news bulletin on the TV and the radio, all over every newspaper for weeks. It is the case everyone is talking about. And when he said, I'm not really across the details, that would be his useless advisors saying the best way to get through this tricky situation, Prime Minister, is to feign ignorance. No, it wasn't. He made an absolute fool of himself. He was clearly lying, and he insulted the intelligence of the nation. Once again, Keir Starmer screws it up in spades.
Absolutely. He looked completely ridiculous standing there amongst the cheese and butter in Lidl, telling us that he didn't know about this case. And it's insulting to people's intelligence. And you know what? People would have given him so much more credit if he'd stood there and said, of course, I'm more than aware of it, and I understand why people feel really passionate about it. And I see the human side of this. Of course I do. Yes. But there's a balance here. Well, I think I wouldn't have agreed with him, but I could at least have not felt quite so blood boiling about it. Yeah. But instead, stand there like a freaking robot and say that.
Yeah,
what
he was lying. He was lying, and also insulting the intelligence of the nation. I keep hearing, you know, that old Boaty McBoatface or whatever his name is, the ginger guy who runs his office, is a sort of political, master stroker, a brilliant brain. Well, I don't think he is. I don't think he is. Admittedly, he hasn't got a lot to work with in Keir Starmer, but sending him into that situation, say, pretend you don't know about it, that is just pathetic. It's pathetic. And after these messages, after this break, Isabel, we're going to talk about the migrant crisis, and in terms of Keir Starmer's approach to that too is beyond pathetic, actually. We'll talk about the extraordinary scenes in the Channel today and over the last couple of days. It's just beggars belief. That next, stay tuned.
What the hell is English culture?
Well, there's your problem. How do you not know what it's sense of fair play? It's our democratic values. It's equality. It's freedom of speech. That is such a big part of English/British culture. I think that is kind of in our DNA, actually. Yeah.
Because Pakistanis and Indians famously don't do fair play. It just makes.
Sorry, are you under any illusion about how politics is run in both India and Pakistan? Are you under an illusion about the level of corruption involved in both of those countries' political systems?
The point is,
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Yes, well, Isabel, let's talk about the migrant crisis today. What a day has unfolded before our very eyes almost today. Basically, this has not been confirmed, but we're getting reliable reports that today, sunny, nice-ish day, has seen the biggest number of migrants cross the Channel all year, 820. That is beating the previous high of 705 on April the 15th. Amid this chaos, as I mentioned earlier to you, incredibly, a flotilla of 66 small little ships they call them, as opposed to small boats, little ships, were setting sail from Ramsgate in Kent to commemorate the incredible evacuation from Dunkirk beach in the Second World War. A legendary event, of course. And there they are, setting out into the Channel. Along comes a border force vessel. Get out of the way, move aside. So all of these 66 little ships commemorating one of the greatest days in British military history have to disperse, get out of the way, while the border force escorts a migrant's dinghy through them into our shores. Does that not sum up the shambles of what's going on our south coast right now? And the fact, does it not highlight how hopeless Keir Starmer is in dealing with this escalating chaos?
I mean, it's hard to imagine a more powerful symbol of the warping of priorities and the total loss of our self-confidence in dealing with this. Why the hell should anyone get out of the way for these people? I mean, as long as they're safe, they should jolly well have just been made to wait until, you know, the more important flotilla had gone on its way where it needed to go. And while we're at it, I do think we should mention this new, what we hope is not going to be a new trend of migrants bringing their pets with them.
Yeah, we'll move on to the dog that I am stoically continuing to call an Alsatian. For some reason, you can't call them that anymore. You have to call them German Shepherds. Well, when I grew up, they were called Alsatians. Yeah, so I'm sticking with it in the same way I'm returning to Peking as well. I'm no more of this. And Kiev. I'm sick of all these pronunciations I'm being ordered to employ. So, yes, an Alsatian. We'll talk about that in just a second, because we also have to talk about what happened yesterday. In fact, 49 migrants came across yesterday, relatively small number. But incredibly, as it set off this dinghy, this small boat from the northern French coast, there was some kind of incident on the boat and two migrants died. Two migrants died in this small boat. So basically, as far as I can work out, they hauled out the dead bodies and said to the rest of the migrants, carry on. And so they continued their journey and they made it to Britain. Too late. I mean, and as you say, you know, now we have an asylum seeker dog. A dog that's, I mean, I'm glad, I'm very pleased, you know me and animals, I'm really pleased.
It's not the dog's fault.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really pleased that we're looking after this poor innocent creature. It's not his fault, not its fault, because we don't know if it's a he or a she. But it's in a Deal quarantine kennel now, obviously being tested for rabies and other infectious diseases. So that costs quite a lot of money. I know this. I put my own dog from America through quarantine. It's a lot more than an expensive hotel to have your dog in a quarantine. It costs thousands and thousands of pounds. So we're paying for that. The Border Force, I suppose, to their credit, are thinking of employing the dog once it passes its medical tests to be one of their sniffer hounds or something. But yeah, again, it's a story that just sums up the absurdity, the kind of nonsensical shambles of what's going on right now.
Completely. I mean, it is an absolute mickey take, isn't it? You know, now you bring your pets. whatever next, and they also get put up in a hotel. I mean, of course, I'm with you, and I actually think it's an imaginative and brilliant response to say, actually, we're going to press this Alsatian, because that's what I call them too, into the service of maybe border control. I mean, that would be very, very suitable, wouldn't it?
I think it'd be great for the dog because you have a nice, lazy life because you don't have anything to do.
You have to do anything.
You just lie around on boats watching migrants come across from France. It'll be a great life for the dog. Talk about a dog's life, eh? So we wish that hound well, and I hope the Border Force do employ him. But he looks like a lovely dog, he or she, and there's no doubt he or she will be found a home if it doesn't go to the Border Force. So good luck to the dog. Made me think, though, you've seen these scenes, Isabel, where the dinghies are leaving the beaches and these enormous fights going on to get I want to go on, and people getting pushed off. How did they manage to get a dog on? I mean, one of the rejects who didn't get on the boat, I thought they would have had cause for complaint, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, we've also read reports of it being quite normal for there to be migrants with knives on these vessels. I mean, it's not, we see pictures of them all apparently having a cheery time, having a nice little cruise across the channel and taking pictures of themselves for TikTok. But I think there can be some pretty ugly and aggressive scenes as people do or don't get on board. And we know from some brilliant reporting down on the coast there that many people make multiple attempts to get into those vessels and sometimes only get over to the UK after the 8th or 9th attempt, which would have been, in my view, 8 or 9 good opportunities to stop them having another go. But it seems that there's an unlimited number of attempts to get over here.
And just to remind everybody, 820 we're being told today. 820 migrants. Biggest day of the year. This is getting worse and worse and worse. And one last story I'd like to discuss with you. I covered this the other night before he was actually sentenced. This is an Egyptian guy called Ahmed Ibid. And the government's trying to let it be known that he is the first triumph of their smash the gangs strategy because he made 12 million quid organising the transportation of illegal migrants. So you think, oh, well, so they've arrested him. Now, this is where the story goes downhill if you're trying to spin it and you're in 10 Downing Street right now. OK. So he made £12 million organising transportation of illegals. Smash the gangs. Well, he's got nothing to do with the cross-channel gangs. His business was transporting Libyan illegals across the Mediterranean to Europe. So they cannot claim this is the smashing of a gang. Here it gets worse. This guy was organising his £12 million business while on benefits. Our benefits, British benefits, to feed his wife and 12-year-old kid. He was living in taxpayer-funded accommodation, a nice flat in West London, from where he ran his people smuggling business. Now, he was allowed to be an asylum seeker. He got here, came across in 2023, illegally, on a small boat, with his wife and kid. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? He applied for asylum. They said, "Oh, well, yes, we'll process. Yes, you can live here. Here's a free flat, and here's some benefits to feed your family." Oh, you're running your own business as well. That's good. Guess what? He had to reveal when he asked to be an asylum seeker. It was that a few years previously he tried to break into Italy and got caught trying to smuggle in 1 ton of cannabis and did 6 years in jail.
Oh
and yet was allowed to stay here as an asylum seeker at our expense, running a people smuggling business. Keir Starmer, I think, has slightly lost control of this saga, hasn't he?
Oh my! I mean, it'd be so interesting to see. I mean, do we know what sentence he's got?
25 years. 25 years.
25, yeah, but wait until it gets before that appeal judge.
Holroyd will let him out, yeah.
Manifestly excessive, Kevin.
Manifestly excessive. Anyway, there you have it, folks. The swirling mess of this awful migrant crisis that our government, our Prime Minister and Calamity Cooper, the hopeless Home Secretary, are doing nothing about except saying we're going to smash the gangs, smash the gangs. They haven't smashed any gangs. And 820 came across today. For God's sake, Starmer, get a grip. We'll be talking about that little man next, so stick around, Isabel.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel, let's revisit the Brexit betrayal, because the full horror of it, which, as we were alluding to earlier, has really enraged so many people. People feel so sold out by this. 17.4 million people voted to leave Europe. This guy has taken us back in. This is worse than what we used to have. At least when we were a member of that sclerotic old organisation, the European Union, the Brussels Club, at least we had a vote. At least we were one of the rule makers. Now we don't have a vote, we're just a rule taker. We have just paid, or Starmer, the world's worst negotiator, has agreed to hand over once again to Brussels billions of pounds every year for the privilege of them bossing us around with their millions of rules and regulations that they love so much. It is pathetic, but the full horror of it is only just emerging. Now, this guy went into these negotiations, as we discussed the other night, by giving a press conference the night before saying, yeah, I'm definitely going to sign this deal. Yeah, 100%. There's supposed to be negotiations the next day. Rod Little and I discussed this. A good allegory for it is this, that it's a bit like you or I going into a second-hand car dealer, you know, an array of cars, and some spiv comes up to you, second-hand car dealer, saying, "Now, can I interest you?" So you stop it before you try to sell me any one of these second-hand cars. Can I just tell you that I definitely will be buying one of them, whatever happens, 100% I'm going to buy one. That is effectively what he did with the EU. He went into those alleged negotiations on Monday morning, having already said he was going to sign the deal, and they did him up like a kipper, like the Sun said. They really, really did. But here's the deal. Oh, by the way, here's another funny detail. You think negotiations, you go round the table, one side, don't you? Apparently, they all sat on the same side of the table. They didn't even sit. Anyway, here's the deal. He didn't sign off on most of it. So he sort of agreed to it, but didn't sign off on it. So he said, one thing I've managed to achieve is no more expensive phone rate hell when you go to Europe on your holidays. There will be cheaper phone rates for Brits when they go to EU companies. Guess what the EU said today? No, there won't. We're not doing that, right? He agrees to free movement for the under-30s. And then, after the agreement, says, oh, yeah, we're looking for a cap of 100,000, no more than 100,000. EU, well, you should have mentioned that before. No deal. And the EU passport queues, the EQs, which, by the way, I think I said this to you the other night, I like not going in the EU queue. It sort of makes me proud, you know, independent Brits, you know, none of that Brussels gang, you know, I want to stand around with the Brussels losers. However, you know, he sold it. He goes much cheaper, much faster queues, you know. I mean, big deal anyway. But it turns out that the EU can't agree that because one of the few areas where the EU allows nations to govern themselves, to make their own decisions, is passport control. The EU has no power over EU countries in terms of their passport control. So Ursula von der Leyen was not empowered, not entitled to make that concession. So you've got all these pluses that he's going, this is brilliant. Yeah, look what I've achieved. He hasn't achieved any of them. They're not signed off, and it's getting worse.
He's just brought back a steaming, gigantic cow pat, hasn't he? That's what he served us with. It's absolutely dire. And I think over time, people are going to come to resent it even more. I mean, the whole thing about, you know, they put out this little advert saying, you know, getting you to the beach sooner. Just absolutely ridiculous, as if the British people are going to be bought off that easily.
Well, you say getting to the beach sooner. Was that a message to the illegal migrants? Yeah. The 820 that came across today, yeah.
Yeah, they got to the beach much sooner, didn't they? Tomorrow, by the way, we get the next set of annual net migration figures. I heard,
yeah.
So let's see what those look like. They will be horrendous, I've no doubt. I mean, you know, the bar is pretty high already. But any cap that was set on the youth mobility scheme, the problem is we just couldn't trust that cap. It would be completely meaningless. It would just be as meaningful as smashing the vile people smuggling gangs. That youth mobility scheme will be a free-for-all without any doubt at all.
Yeah, exactly right. And you know, it's an ill wind that blows nobody any good, and Reform have told Starmer that your EU deal, your Brexit reset, will cost you, Keir, the next election, and I think they're right. I think this has put the cap on it. You know, I was saying last week, I was slow to accept the oft vaunted idea that Nigel Farage could be our next Prime Minister. But the local election vote and the by-election in Runcorn and Keir Starmer's subsequent performance, this catastrophe of the Brexit betrayal, I think Nigel Farage should start measuring up the curtains in number 10 Downing Street now.
Well, there are 4 wretched years to go before people get a chance to decide whether they think Nigel Farage is the best person to, first of all, unravel this absolute horror show of a Brexit betrayal. And, I mean, whether it's first or second, stop the immigration crisis. To me, that comes the first, actually, of the list. The way things are going, I don't think that he's got much competition for the job, but anything can happen in 4 years. No way he will be thinking about measuring up the curtains. You know, all of us on that side of politics are keenly aware how easily you can blow it. And, you know, we don't want the country to get that much worse in the next 4 years. Things are really awful already. Can you imagine where we're going to be after another 3 or 4 years of this moron?
Yeah, we don't want it to get any worse, but let's face it, it's going to get worse. And reform, I mean, they're not celebrating. You don't dance on people's graves, as it were. But I think they do know that this Prime Minister is the biggest helper they've got. I mean, he's so hopeless. And he has no idea. He has no idea how unpopular his Brexit reset is. He has no idea and no appreciation of the fact that he has betrayed 17.4 million people who voted to leave the EU. Why he thinks they suddenly want to rejoin is beyond me, but it will cost him, and it will cost him dear. We're going to come back to Starmer in a little while after the break, Isabel. We're going to talk about his humiliating U-turn on the winter fuel allowance, and we're going to have a look at David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, in a fury of anti-Israel rage. It really is quite disconcerting. We'll have a look at that after this break. Stay where you are.
And also a story about an asylum seeker's dog, front page of the Sun today, in quarantine for many months at taxpayers' expense, came over in a dinghy. It's a German Shepherd. I'm assuming we can return him to Germany at some point. I mean, that's his heritage. That's all I'm saying. I mean, these mad stories. But so we know we've got the economy, we've got immigration, we have NHS is still a big issue, but we've also got the issue now of, I suppose, culture and freedom of speech and tutored justice.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. A bit of breaking news. You know that Irish rap trio, the Northern Irish rap trio, Kneecap. One of the members of that band, a guy called Liam O'Hanna, who performs under the stage name Mo Chara, has been charged with a terrorism offence relating to displaying a flag in support of the prescribed terrorist group Hezbollah at a gig in London last November. This has been announced by the Met Police. You remember, this is the band that were in trouble for telling their fans at a gig the only good Tory is a dead Tory. So Liam O'Hanna, stage name Mo Chara, charged with a terrorism offence offence for allegedly displaying a flag to support Hezbollah at a gig in London last November. Let's go back to Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. Very quickly, we're going to have to rush through this now, Isabel, but quite an interesting day in Parliament today. And first off, this U-turn, this humiliating U-turn by the Prime Minister on the winter fuel allowance. They, of course, cruelly axed that, freezing millions of grannies in the process. Well, he says now they're going to bring it back, but it isn't really that. Let's have a listen to old two-tier Keir in the Commons today.
As the economy improves, we want to make sure people feel those improvements in their days as their lives go forward. And that is why we want to ensure that as we go forward, more pensioners are eligible for winter fuel payments. As you would expect, Mr. Speaker, we will only make decisions we can afford. That is why we will look at that as part of a fiscal event.
You see, people are starting to hail this. Oh, it's a U-turn. He's bringing back the winter fuel allowance. No, he's not. That's just an announcement. That's just to hunt headlines. Typical Starmer. All he's saying is, you know, in the old days, before they cruelly and unnecessarily axed the 300 quid a year that lots of pensioners relied on to keep warm in the cold winter months, everybody got it. And OK, there was criticism saying, well, you have a lot of millionaire pensioners are getting it. But everybody was happy with the system. Didn't cost the government all that much money. It was handy. They axed it. Now he says, oh, I'm bringing it. He's not. They're going to mean test it. They're going to. It's not bringing back the winter fuel allowance. It's just another Keir Starmer snake oil salesman announcement.
Anyway, why does he talk like that? I mean, does he not understand that most people don't know what a fiscal event is and that no normal says fiscal event? What he means is at the next budget. How about you just say that and then people might understand what you're on about? I think that they've been absolutely hammered over this winter fuel thing on the doorsteps in the run-up to these local elections. People, that is what people mention. You know, when you're out campaigning, that is one of the many things that people are very angry about. So as usual, he's trying to say, yeah, we're listening. Yeah. We're going to do something about it. What that ends up looking like, I don't know. And anyway, I don't think it undoes the damage. You know, all the people that are furious about Labour having done that are probably not going to go, oh, well, that's all right then, because eventually they gave it back to me.
But they haven't. You know, they are not restoring the winter fuel allowance. And I seem to remember, if I got this right, the means-tested pensioners that have retained the payment have had to fill in a form which I think has got like 250 questions on it. So it's going to be the same for the more people who get it. But this is not the restoration of the winter fuel allowance. The winter fuel allowance used to go, no questions asked, 300 quid to every pensioner in the land. That is not being restored. This is just a PR stunt by a Prime Minister who made the mistake of his life and is not actually making that mistake good. He's going to continue with it. So don't get fooled by that. Talking of useless, annoying, pathetic socialist politicians, let's move on to David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary. Now, this was a guy that I seem to recall was not exactly effusive in his condemnation of what happened on October the 7th, when Hamas, of course, committed that terrible atrocity against innocent Jewish people, killing 1,200, raping women, literally putting babies into the oven and cooking them, that kind of thing. He didn't say a whole lot after that. It was vaguely, oh, we stand with Israel. Yes, yes, yes. But now, oh my God, he's on his home territory. Now he can condemn Israel, at least he thinks he can, because of what's going on in Gaza, because Israel, of course, is stepping up their campaign against Hamas, are invading Gaza and are blocking aid into Gaza, because what happens when the aid goes into Gaza is Hamas nick it and then sell it, often across the border, apparently, to the Egyptians and the Jordanians. You know, so that's why they're not letting aid in. This is just ridiculous. Anyway, check out how happy, how thrilled David Lammy is to be on his favoured territory, condemning the Jews, condemning Israel. Take it away, Dave.
Netanyahu's government is planning to drive Gazans from their homes into a corner of the Strip to the south and permit them a fraction of the aid that they need. Yesterday, Minister Smuggling even spoke of Israeli forces cleansing Gaza. Destroying what's left of residents, Palestinians, being relocated, he said, to third countries. We must call this what it is. It is extremism. It is dangerous. It is repellent. It is monstrous, and I condemn it in the strongest possible terms.
What he didn't say is it's genocide, because it isn't genocide. Genocide has to be legally proved. And also he threatened that unless Israel loosened their grip, allowed aid in, that we may impose sanctions on Israel. So there he was. Now, what I didn't hear in that speech, Isabel, and I think it's quite a key point, is any demand for Hamas to release the remaining 50 or so hostages. We fear only 20 of them are alive. Now, in my view, Israel are entitled to continue their aggression until Hamas let those poor people out. Why didn't David Lammy include that in his speech?
Well, I listened to his whole speech, and it was, towards the end, quite jaw-dropping. I believe, in fairness to him, he did make fleeting reference.
OK, fair enough, fair enough.
Fleeting reference. It was very much done as an afterthought. It was a jaw-dropping speech, you know, and that reiteration of the word cleansing, I know what he was trying to do there. He was trying to imply that what this is ethnic cleansing. Let's put it another way. What the Israelis are trying to do is cleanse Gaza of terrorists, and that is hardly an unreasonable objective. And until those terrorists have been wiped out, and it's hardly an easy thing to do, you know, Israel and its good people face an existential threat, and they are in an ongoing situation where they face that terror every day. And the level of partisan interpretation on display in the Commons yesterday was genuinely shocking. And, you know, we said this before earlier this week, Kev, about the way that the Jewish community feel in London about this type of rhetoric. I say London, but of course it's not just London. There are strong Jewish community up and down the UK. They feel utterly abandoned and vilified. And that is on our government and its rhetoric. And we know where David Lammy's coming from on this. And he's not even making any pretense at being even-handed. It was awful.
Yeah, and the government, of course, is embracing the incredibly anti-Israel biased United Nations contention given by its humanitarian chief, a guy called Tom Fletcher, predicting that in the next 48 hours, unless something is done, unless they let aid in, 14,000 babies will die in Gaza. Where do you think they got that number from? Oh, I know, something like this, plucked it out of the air. I mean, and this is enshrined by our government, the BBC. Oh, the UN just said 14,000 Gazan babies are going to die in the next 48 hours. What a load of claptrap.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to know exactly what's going on, but those figures are just plucked out of absolutely nowhere. The other thing I noted yesterday in Parliament was David Lammy boasting about restoring or wanting to restore aid under UNRWA. I mean, UNRWA is utterly discredited this so-called aid programme that swallows up millions of pounds of British taxpayers' money that then goes basically into Hamas pockets. Brilliant idea, guys. Thanks for restoring that one.
Jeez. It's the enthusiasm with which they go at Israel. They're never happier than when they're attacking Israel. Typical socialists. Some might call it verging on anti-Semitism, but I couldn't possibly comment. Thank you very much, Isabel. What a fantastic hour, and for another brilliant week. Isabel Oakeshott there, our international editor. She'll be back with me on Monday, as always. Always good to talk to her. When we come back, the BBC, why can't they get back that 200 grand they paid Hugh Edwards? We'll find out. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Extraordinary scenes a couple of hours ago, maybe even less than that, in the White House, in the Oval Office, as President Trump confronted South African President, the South African President, with accusations of genocide, the murder, the mass murder, he said, of white farmers in South Africa. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa said he wanted to know where exactly this had all happened. Trump played him a video, but it was another one of these bizarre pieces of theatre in the Oval Office, all televised live. At one point, the lights all went out as they showed this video. You couldn't actually see it, but they're all watching like that. In the middle of this, really sort of hilariously, is the famous South African golfer Ernie Els thinking, what the hell am I doing here? So it all kicked off. So in half an hour or so, we will talk to a South African, and his name is Errol Musk. He is the father of Elon Musk. I think he'll have a lot to say about it, so should be interesting. Now, in about 20 minutes or so, we're going to go back to the migrant crisis, because you know these stupid morons, these immigration judges, these left-wing immigration judges, keep letting people stay for no apparent reason. Well, one of them is now allowed this Iraqi guy to stay, who said, "Can I have?" He turned up an illegal boat and all that. He said, "Can I apply for asylum?" And they said, "Yeah, sure. What is your reason?" And he said, "Well, I don't really have one, but if you give me a while, I'll come up with one. I'll come up with a reason." This guy has been allowed to stay on the basis that if he went back to Iraq, he would be persecuted. Another one of those cases. So more insanity on the migrant crisis front. These judges are at the heart of it. Honestly, what is going on in this country? 820 migrants coming across the channel today. A magnificent flotilla of 66 little ships commemorating that astonishing Dunkirk beach evacuation in World War II. Told to disperse, get out of the way. We're the border force. We've got a migrant dinghy to come through. To hell with the migrant dinghy. Let the flotilla continue. Unbelievable. What is going on in this country? 03444991000. But before we get to this, let's talk about the BBC. Extraordinary emails have been revealed. The Sunday Times petitioned the BBC for emails and information surrounding the saga of the BBC's in-house paedophile Hugh Edwards. What were executives saying, you know, as his shame unfolded? What happened after he was charged with child sex abuse offences? What we do know happened is when he was charged, about 3 executives knew, including the Director General, Tim Davie, and the Head of News, Deborah Turness. And Hugh Edwards, for the next couple of months or so, 2-3 months, was continued to be fully paid. He got about 450 grand a year, so he got £200,000. He was paid by the BBC after these offences. Now, the BBC, when he got nicked, when he pleaded guilty to these offences, and by the way, another question is, why is he walking free, walking the streets, a child sex abuser, when Lucy Connolly, a young mum who her only offence was to write a few nasty words on Twitter, she's doing 31 months behind bars. I said 31 years. Trust me, in about 10 months, that'll be exactly what sentence you will get for nasty words on Twitter. Welcome to two-tier Britain's, two-tier Keir's tyrannical Britain. But the desperation of these emails has now been revealed. The Sunday Times, of course, the secretive Beeb tried to stop the Times getting this information, but through the Freedom of Information Act, they finally succeeded. They got a load of emails, of many of them heavily redacted, but it does prove that the BBC has desperately been trying to get this 200 grand back from Hugh Edwards, and guess what? He won't give it to them. So my question would be, why don't they sue him? Let's talk to someone who knows all about the BBC, ex-BBC presenter Adrian Mills. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Well, you know, if you look at these emails, but Deborah Turness, Head of News, is right in the middle of them. Tim Davie's involved as well. But there's an exchange between Deborah and Hugh Edwards, in which, as I said, most of these emails are just black lines, you know, it's all redacted, typically. But this is there for all to see. It's Deborah saying, Hugh, you indicated that you said that you were going to give us back this £200,000 that we paid you after the child sex abuse charges. Could you now do so, please? Guess what? He hasn't done it.
Yeah, it is quite extraordinary, because if you think about it, if it was you or I, and we'd been sort of suspended from our work for allegations and then found, say, not guilty, I would fully have expected to have been paid my salary while I was under investigation. If I was found guilty, then I would fully expect not to have received any remuneration from the BBC. And if I had, I would be paying it back. And had I decided not to pay it back, then I would expect the full force of the law and a prosecution to come back, because he has taken public money. And it's just extraordinary, the BBC, and that you think the BBC have got some very powerful lawyers in there, that they haven't gone after him. I don't get it.
That's my point, Adrian. You know, I can understand, you know, if you give me 200 grand and then you start saying I want it back, I might be reluctant to hand it back. I think I'll hang on to it if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I think the BBC, with respect to the fact that they deal with public money, this is our money, this is TV licence pay money, they should play hardball. They should go for him with lawyers and say, if you don't give it back, we're going to sue your backside. Yeah. On this basis, you broke your contract.
Yes, very much so.
You brought the BBC into disrepute, yeah?
Completely, absolutely. And we all know, because of recent events, that if you bring the BBC into disrepute, they come down quite heavily on you nowadays. But what is extraordinary is the fact that he thinks he doesn't have to pay it back. And yet the indications within the emails that have been released, and let's bear in mind that an awful lot of that redaction, there could be some really damning evidence in there, is basically sort of hinting that, yes, you've more or less agreed that you would pay it back. It's not even a case of, we're asking nicely. Yet again, it is another example of say one thing, do another. And I do wonder if the BBC are just hoping that actually this will just disappear in the ether of time and we'll all forget about it. Truth of the matter is, we won't. And the fact that Hugh Edwards is a free man, when you think, as you so rightly said, some of the convictions that have been handed down over the last year or so have been so damning for crimes that are a quarter, a tenth, 100th of what he was accused of and found guilty of.
Exactly right. Also revealed in these emails was the fact that the BBC executives at the BBC clearly dragged their heels about what we could frame as the Hugh Edwards problem. So apparently, minutes before he was about to go into the dock at Westminster Magistrates Court and plead guilty to those child sex abuse offences, he had a huge cache of disgusting pictures, which is child sex abuse. You know, it doesn't matter, it's just pictures. You abuse, you inherently...
well, you're supposed to report the person that sent them to you, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, if you have pictures like that, you are complicit in the abuse of those children. It's as simple as
very
that.
much so.
So he's a child sex abuser, and there's nothing worse than that. Now, the BBC sort of have tried to maintain, well, you know, we didn't know. Well, apparently in 2000, just before he went into the dock, minutes before, the Director General of the BBC received an email from an executive saying, I think you better know about this. We actually received a complaint about Hugh Edwards' behaviour towards younger members of staff and younger men in 2012.
And did nothing about it.
Did nothing about it. What is wrong with that organisation? Why can't you know? Well, you should know, Adrian.
Well, I worked there for 7, 8, 9 years. Yeah. It's vast. And it's become so huge and enormous that it's very difficult to maintain and control, who you have working for you. I would say, though, that actually because of his high profile and because it is the BBC, that I suspect his crime may have come to light if it had worked for another organisation which has not got the same profile as the BBC, and him being on television all the time, he may well have gone completely undetected for many years and may still be out there. So there is one thing to be said about that BBC investigation, is that they dragged their feet, but we've had this conversation before. I've had it on this programme many times before. It's yet again another name thrown into the mishmash of people that seem to be higher, way above the law in terms of regulation by the BBC and the law in the country itself.
Exactly right. And culturally, this is the problem with the BBC. Tim Davie is trying to divest the BBC of this syndrome. You know all about this. It is the way that organisation absolutely venerates, beatifies anyone who's on screen, anyone who talks into a microphone. I know when I used to do a lot of work at the BBC, you know, always as a sort of honoured guest and all that kind of stuff, I used to sit outside these studios and some sort of young assistant producer will come out and say, are you the talent? Yes, I go like this. What? So that's what they call anyone who talks into a microphone or presents a TV show, and that feeds into their attitude towards their famous stars. They venerate them and they let them get away with murder.
There's a huge difference to them.
Almost literally.
Yeah, and I saw it in my time when I worked at the BBC, that if you were on-screen talent, which is a word that apparently the BBC have now tried to ban, you're not classed as a performer, that if you were on screen, you got away with a lot more than if you weren't. And I know of stories, I've heard stories, I've seen things, and you think, you're only getting away with that because you're a presenter. I've seen outrageous behaviour just in the way people have talked to others, the way they've sort of responded to others. And I go, wow, I can't believe that you, because of your persona, think you can get away with this. I'm not so sure in the general terms that so many of them would get away with it nowadays. But when it does come to those individuals that are big earners, and you know the 3 or 4 that I'm thinking about, that the BBC are terrified, because when you look at how TV is going, certainly, broadcast media, we've seen ITV cutting back with all their broadcasting, that the BBC don't want to lose their on-screen talent, no matter what they get up to. And they really have to be so badly behaved for them to get the push eventually.
Yeah, we'll come to the Lineker moment in just a minute or so, because we need to discuss him. He is symptomatic of exactly what we're talking about. A big star who got away with awful things at the BBC, too terrified to stand up to him. But I've got a personal story about the way the BBC treats its staff and its stars, and it's about Hugh Edwards. It's a friend of mine. It's a friend of mine, young friend, a guy, good-looking young man, and this would date back, I would suggest, about 7 or 8 years, something like that, maybe a little less. And he suddenly started to receive lots of emails, texts, pictures from one Hugh Edwards. I've seen you across the newsroom. Do you fancy a drink? Da 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 da. My friend is gay, but he wasn't at all keen on Hugh Edwards' attentions, and frankly, Hugh Edwards, in that respect, was egregiously abusing his position. Big, powerful star, trying to inveigle a much more junior member of staff into some kind of uncompromising relationship. So in the end, my friend, he kept saying, "Hugh, can you stop this? Can you stop?" And he wouldn't. So in the end, my friend, in desperation, went to HR. As I say, I couldn't quite put this, but probably 6 years ago, something like that.
Career limiting, yes.
And HR said to him, well, it's Hugh Edwards. He's a very important man. Are you sure you want to pursue this? Yeah. That sums up the BBC's attitude, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I've heard that before. I was aware of a presenter who stuck their tongue in a young researcher's ear. She complained, and that young researcher was dragged into the editor's office, and then the person involved was called in, and it was said, "Can you tell her what you've told me?" What do you mean? Oh, well, can you repeat the allegations? So this poor girl, 19, 20 years old, left in tears, and she left the BBC shortly after. And that person continued to work for the BBC. And I expressed my horror at the time, but this was in sort of the late 80s, early 90s. Nothing happened other than a quick rap across the knuckles. And I suspect, isn't it interesting though as well, they're all men. You don't hear about women behaving like this. And I just find it quite extraordinary that time and time again, men lose their moral compass. They then think that they can abuse and behave in any way they wish because they are the talent, as you so mentioned.
Yeah. And last point, I'd love to talk about Gary Lineker a tad. Now, the point is, I blame the BBC for this. There's a sad side to this. I always say, I'll listen to Gary Lineker talking about football all day long. And frankly, in a private conversation, I'd be interested to hear his personal opinions about politics or whatever. But I don't think he should have advertised them all over social media. But by indulging this guy, by letting him get away with what they shouldn't have let him get away with, they should never have let him make all these tweets, it came to this pretty pass where he ends up sharing a blatantly anti-Semitic Instagram post, says that he didn't really understand that rat imagery was Nazi anti-Semitism.
For an intelligent man, I find that extraordinary.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, Adrian, I've said it a minute, I just don't believe him. I think he's lying. This is a guy 2 days before he shared that post, gave an interview to the Daily Telegraph saying it's very important to know your history. So I don't believe him, but that's what he says, so we'll have to take that. But it is the BBC that has let him get away with this and away with it, to the point where he's pushed it, he's crossed the line, and now, you know, I blame him, of course, but I also blame the BBC. I think it's very sad that this excellent football presenter, really good at his job, is leaving the BBC after 26 years in disgrace under an anti-Semitic cloud. That's his fault, and it's the BBC's fault, and it's a damn shame.
That's a very good point, and I would agree with you on that. Time and time again, I've seen his tweets. Now, there is that rule that sort of says if you work as a broadcaster in the news and current affairs, you're not allowed to be doing anything like that. And his argument was always, well, I'm a sports presenter, but you've got millions of people following you. You are a representative of the BBC, and there are standards to be maintained. The problem here, as you so rightly say, is the BBC, rather than coming down on him very heavily, well, look what they did when they did come down on him heavily and they suspended him. Everybody else went, oh, my goodness me, I'd better step back and actually support Gary. I wonder if there weren't a few of them that were hoping they'd get the call and say, can you present Match of the Day tonight? On this occasion, though, the one thing I would disagree with is this absolute anger that he's being allowed to present his final Match of the Day on Saturday.
Are you okay with that? Because I'm not sure I am. I can see the argument, but, you know, I think he's crossed the anti-Semitic line.
Well, it's a head and heart number, isn't it? I get why, you know, he shouldn't be doing the World Cup and the FA Cup, and I just go, do you know something, 25 years a servant, let's work on the assumption, being magnanimous, that you did make a mistake, a dreadful mistake. This is the end of your career at the BBC. But you and I both know he's got a very successful podcasting company.
Oh, he's fine. No, I'm not going to worry about Gary's future.
I'm not shedding any tears, to be honest.
Yeah, the last thing that kind of worries me, Adrian, is the reason that he's got away with these tweets that are always against Israel. This one, undeniably anti-Semitic, we'll take his word for it that he didn't really know. But the leniency with which he's been treated, what worries me, emanates from an organisation that shares his views about Israel. The BBC, I'm afraid, has turned into an anti-Israel. Danny Cohen, the former head of BBC TV, obviously a Jewish guy, he says that even when he was there, he felt it was a palpably anti-Semitic organisation, and it looks like it's got worse. So Gary Lineker was indulged because so many people at the Beeb share his views.
People were scared to say anything because he's Gary Lineker, and he just goes back to the idol that you've built him up. And I'm afraid now is the time, the tall poppy syndrome, time for you to crash.
Yeah, and when he tweets again about Israel, no one's going to give a damn. But anyway, Adrian, fantastic to talk to you. Really good stuff. Come on again soon. Adrian Mills there, former BBC presenter, on this extraordinary story of Hugh Edwards. Pay the money back. And if he won't pay that 200 grand back, BBC, come on, sue him. He broke your contract. He brought the organisation into disrepute. That's a breach of his contract. Sue him. Show some backbone for once in your spineless jellyfish lives, eh? When we come back, we're going to talk about another ridiculous tribunal immigration case where a guy has been allowed to stay even though he couldn't really come up with a reason for why he wanted to stay. What the hell? That next. Stay tuned.
And also a story about an asylum seeker's dog, front page of the Sun today, in quarantine for many months at taxpayers' expense, came over in a dinghy. It's a German Shepherd. I'm assuming we can return him to Germany at some point. I mean, that's his heritage. That's all I'm saying. These mad stories. But so we know we've got the economy, we've got immigration. We have, NHS is still a big issue. But we've also got the issue now of, I suppose, culture and freedom of speech and tutor justice.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In the studio, it's Barrister Andrew Eborn. Have you ever lost a case by any chance?
No. Well, funny you should mention that.
He's never lost a case.
Funny you should mention that.
He's never lost it. He's never had a case. But no, seriously, he's never lost a case, so he's the man to talk to. I want to talk, Andrew, about the ongoing insanity of our illegal migrant crisis. As you know, they come here illegally on illegal, unlawful small boats, and then they claim asylum, usually saying, "Oh, escaping war and torture and all this kind of stuff." And not to put too fine a point on it, they get ridiculous lenient treatment from these immigration tribunal judges who seem, to me, I'm probably being unfair to some of them, but most of them seem to be lunatic left-wingers who are kind of at war with this country. You're a paedophile, you've just done 5 years in jail for sexually abusing British children, you can stay. They've done this. Paedophiles are regularly allowed to stay. Oh, well, you've got a right to a family life, your own children. You abuse other people's children, but you've got a right to stay here because you've got your own children. Oh, we can't send you, a paedophile, back to Somalia because in Somalia they don't like paedophiles and they treat them badly. Therefore, you could stay here. Well, I've got news for you, immigration tribunal judge idiots. We don't like paedophiles much here either. Chuck them out. The latest absurd example is this. A 32-year-old Iraqi, he wasn't actually granted asylum, but he was allowed to stay because a tribunal judge decided that he might be persecuted back in his home country. But when he asked for asylum, when he arrived here illegally, in the back of a lorry, 2016. Remember those days? 9 years ago. Back of a lorry. Almost nostalgic when they used to come under lorries, in the back of lorries. Yes. Now it's, of course, boats. When they said, well, OK, you're applying for asylum, but what is the reason? Yes. He said, well, I haven't really got a reason, but if you gave me a couple of hours, I could come up with a reason. And the judge said, well, yeah, you can stay, no problem, on the basis that apparently he would be persecuted back in Iraq. So my question to you is, what is going on with these judges? There's another case where somebody has been allowed to stay because if he got deported, he wouldn't be. He cuts his son's hair. Yes, and if he got deported, his son's hair would have to be cut by someone else. It's a long-haired kid. Exactly. What's wrong with that kid? Looks like a yeti. Well, we deported his son, and no one else can cut his hair. Yeah. What is this judge, by the way, who allowed the Iraqi to stay, is called Paul Lewis. Yes. What is going on? Well, it is Britain's broken borders, and it is absolutely bonkers. And again, asylum absurdity. What it does, Kevin, is it highlights the difference between asylum, which are very specific rules, and what's Article 3 about torture. And I think this is the important thing. Firstly, as you pointed out, it was in 2016, so this is 9 years later. He arrived illegally on the back of a lorry, so fresh out of Only Fools and Horses. You work on that sort of basis. And the reality is taken all of that time. Just to remind people what asylum is
asylum is the legal protection granted by a country to an individual who has fled their home country due to a well-founded fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership of a particular social group. That's the test.
Does it mention kids not liking foreign chicken nuggets?
Well, that's the thing, you see. That comes under... No, exactly. So none of that. So asylum, which grants you certain rights, and it's important to make the distinction between that and what is Article 3 is about torture. So they turned around and he sort of said, give me a reason, give me a bit of time, I might come up with a reason because I don't really have one at the moment. what they worked out is actually...
There's a judge going, yeah, all right, I'll give you an hour.
give you an hour, come up with something. But they worked out, and actually they decided he hasn't got any credible grounds upon which he can get asylum. However, he did have lots of injuries and evidence of torture, which is the thing which is sort of buried in the story. So what it is...
Paul Lewis fell for that hook, line and sinker.
Well, what they said...
He said, it's obviously you've been tortured. Rubbish!
Well, he was with lots of scars.
Doesn't mean he's been tortured.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? They said there's undisputed evidence of past ill treatment by ISIS and others in Iraq, coupled with...
I'm disputing it.
Well,
obviously you could dispute that. Just because you've got injuries, evidence of injuries, it doesn't mean that ISIS did it or Iraq did it.
Well, and this is... the other crazy thing as well, which you'll love, is they basically he threw his documents away. And what they said...
There's the thing, that's new.
How unusual is that? And so they said it'd be really difficult to re-document him because by the time he's got there, then he's going to sort of persecution.
Oh, well, in that case, he can stay. Look, what is going on with these judges, though? Why are... You're right, you know, you can talk about the ECHR and the right to a family life and all the other clauses that get these people to stay. And people say, oh, well, if we left the ECHR, it'd be brilliant. We wouldn't be shackled by its rules and regulations anymore. I don't think that... I mean, I'd like us to leave the ECHR, but it's not at the centre of the problem. It's not the ECHR even that is the problem. It is the way these tribunal judges interpret the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights. They choose to interpret it in the most lenient way possible. There is no way that any judge will get into any trouble for saying, now you say you got a right to a family life here in Birmingham, but you've just done 5 years in jail for sexually abusing children. So in order to safeguard the children of Britain, I'm sending you back to Somalia. There's no way those judges will get in trouble.
That's the problem. We need to toughen up the rules, and you and I often discuss this.
And do something about these judges.
Absolutely. Well, the judges will say that they will follow the law. But I understand.
But they follow the law in the way that they want to. They're left-wingers. They're Guardian readers. It's clear.
So what we need to make is even clearer, and what I like is what Trump has done on that sort of side. You say, you come here illegally, you're out. We're not going to have none of that. And this is the problem. So Article 3 is always not a loophole, it's a difference, because that's about torture. You don't get the same rights as asylum, but you don't have to prove the same thing. All you're proving is that it's torture. As soon as that threat of torture goes away, you can go out again. So that's what we need to look at. What we also need to do is tighten things up. It is crazy, absolutely bonkers that it was 2016, 9 years later we're still talking about it.
Right to a family life, that has to be challenged in a big way, because as I say, judges, they are deliberately interpreting the rules of the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, to allow a lot of really bad people to stay here. Something, you know, we can leave the ECHR, but we need to do something about these judges. My solution would be this. We have an American system. Judges are elected by the people, so they get worried about the decisions they make, because our judges can't even be reprimanded, let alone sacked. We need to change that. What do you think, folks? Should we be able to sack our judges for these appalling decisions that they keep making? Because if we could sack them, if they knew that the people could sack them every time they let a paedophile stay, they wouldn't let the paedophile stay. See what I'm saying? What do you reckon? 03444991000. Big thanks to Andrew Ebon, who will be filming my brilliant TV show What Just Happened tomorrow with me. So thank you, Andrew.
Always a pleasure.
See you tomorrow. When we come back, extraordinary scenes in the White House earlier. We'll play you a few. Big confrontation between the President of America and the President of South Africa about alleged genocide of white farmers in South Africa. We're going to talk to a white South African. He happens to be the father of Elon Musk. It's Errol Musk. Him next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're hoping to get hold of Errol Musk at the moment. I think he's over in South Africa. I believe he's coming to London next week, so we look forward to having a drink with him. He will join us fairly soon, I think. In the meantime, shall we, in fact, talk... let's take a call, shall we, while we try and get hold of Errol. I'll read a couple of messages while we wait. This is from Toz. He says, the BBC sound just like the NHS. Just listening to Adrian's story, that's Adrian Mills, then made me think of many similar ones from my days in one of the trusts I worked in. Corrupt, the lot of them. Senior management swinging their little... Sorry, I mean, it's their little willies. That's from Vicky. Vicky in Barnsley. All I want is to send... all want sending into space. Love you. Thank you, Toz, Vicky. Let's take that call now. Let's go to Dorset and talk to Jacqueline, who wants to talk about Lucy Connolly. Hi, Jacqueline. What would you like to say?
Oh, hi, Kevin. Evening.
Hi.
Yeah, I was in the car at the time, and I was listening to you talk about Hugh Edwards.
Yes.
And, yeah, vile, absolutely vile creature. And, you know, in the past, the court cases, etc., you know, the arrogance of the man equally. And then prior to your offload with regards to Hugh Edwards, the news came on, and it was talking about that horrendous group, Kneecap,
yeah. One of the members of that group has just been charged with a terrorist offence for waving a Hezbollah flag, apparently, allegedly.
Hezbollah flag, and I'm listening to that initially, and then you were talking about, as I say, Hugh Edwards, and all that was going through my mind at that point, you know, because we are really going down the pan as a country here, and I'm thinking, you know. This is on, you know, this is in fifth gear, this is. And then I heard, and I'm thinking, Kneecap, who actually are they? An adolescent, young adolescents, wet behind the ears, completely naive.
Are they adolescents? They're in their 20s, aren't they?
No,
they're grown. They're grown men. They're adults. They're adults.
Yeah.
They may be infantile, but they're adult. They're adults.
Exactly.
So don't let them off the hook by saying
no,
young adolescents.
I'm so not. Actually, no. Mentally, you know, I don't care physically. You know, mentally, they're adolescents. Up there, they've got very little, haven't they? You know, like I say, so naive, but obviously a good PR team behind them, because they're pressing all the buttons to get the attention.
Well, yeah, we've got to be careful. We've got to be here. We've got to be careful, Jacqueline, because this guy, you know, he's been charged, so it's a live case. So he is alleged to have waved a Hezbollah flag at a Kneecap gig here in London. We don't know what he's going to plead, so we have to be a little bit careful.
Oh, no. But aside from that, we already know that as a group, they put out.
Well, they said the only good Tory MP is a dead Tory MP. Yeah.
You know, kill, basically, and they weren't brought to justice on it.
Well, I don't think. I mean, I take your point. I accept the gist of what you're saying, but what's happened today with this charging of one member of the group does indicate that there is a thorough police investigation going on. We don't know yet, but other charges may be forthcoming. You're exactly right. They're also charged, or they are accused, of inciting violence, inciting death against Tories. The only good Tory is a dead Tory, kill your local MP, all this kind of stuff. They're accused of that, but there are no legal charges yet. But there has been one charge against this guy for waving a Hezbollah flag. A prescribed terrorist group, of course, can't do that. That's against the law. So we don't know what other charges might crop up, if at all. But you see what I mean? I think it's a little unfair to suggest there isn't a thorough police investigation going on into this trio's activities.
But it's understandable. I should feel, as many do around the country, I am sure, what about this group? As in Lucy Connolly, still being kicked around as a political football.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm with you there. That's a disgrace. Well, I don't know what that woman is doing still behind bars. It is ridiculous. She should never have gone to jail in the first place. 31 months is just grotesque, grotesquely disproportionate. All she did was write a few nasty words on Twitter. She was hundreds of miles away from the actual riots. Actual rioters, people who threw bricks and tried to set fire to mosques and asylum seeker hotels, got less than her. They got 2 years. She got 2 years, 7 months. It's mad. It's insane.
She pulled that tweet. She pulled it off because she realised, she recognised, and it was in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, she was emotional.
That she did it.
Yeah.
And what she should have had, I think the whole purpose of actually this call, and equally it was to highlight, the injustices that are going on around us.
Yeah, no,
and we've had no closure on the Hugh Edwards.
Yeah.
But poor Lucy, she's clearly going through a bereavement process, because...
Yeah, she'd lost her own kid a year before. She was very emotionally worked up.
She should have had a therapist, Kevin. She didn't need jail. It isn't jail time, this
I'm not even sure she needs a therapist. I mean, I just think, I just don't think in a Western free democracy anyone should go to jail for what they write on social media. We've got to cut that out of our culture. It is wrong. They're looking at us across the Atlantic from America and they're going, what the hell is going on in Britain? They're locking people up for tweets. It's obscene. It's obscene. She shouldn't be in jail. It's a stain on British justice. It really is. As for kneecap, let's see what else happens, but at least one of them has been charged with an offence. Maybe others will follow. They certainly stand accused of several potential criminal offences. We'll await the outcome of that investigation with interest. Jacqueline, very good point, and thank you for ringing. Jacqueline in Dorset there. Let's go. We didn't bring you Errol Musk, did we? You may have noticed. We've had some trouble linking up with him over there in South Africa, but we will bring him on later in the show, 100% guaranteed, because his take on what happened in the White House, in the Oval Office, over the last couple of hours, this massive bust-up over alleged genocide of white farmers in South Africa between the two presidents, between President Trump, of course, and the South African President, Cyril Ramaphosa, was extraordinary. So we'll play you that and we'll get Errol's take on it, because he is a white person who lives in South Africa, so it will be interesting to find out. That a little later than planned. Let's go to break now. When we come back, we'll talk to James Melville about the fate of the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy. Now, for some time, people have been saying that maybe her job's on the line. There are accusations, I'm sure they're not true, Lisa denies them, that she's a bit lazy. She doesn't put in enough work. So other ministers apparently have been moaning. So there was a story about a month ago that she's going to get their tin tack. Well, now it looks as if it could be worse than that. One way to get rid of her is to cancel her entire department. So it looks as if potentially the Department of what is called Sport, Media, Culture and Sport, Art, basically, could be axed altogether. Therefore, Lisa will be out of a job. So we'll talk about that with James Melville after this break. Stay tuned.
we've secured £104 billion with a B, £1 billion worth of investment, private sector investment, to fix all of those sewers. That's the biggest amount of money, by the way, ever in history invested in our water sector.
And who's going to fix the pipes? Have we got a load of people sitting around who know how to fix pipes that aren't currently employed?
Well, that's why we're setting up a new training academy to make sure that we can get British people who are currently not working, train them up and get them to work doing that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
After the 9 o'clock news, I'll be talking to Greg Swenson, our friend in America, about Donald Trump and the potential that Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, the wife of Joe Biden, the former First Lady, could face charges for elder abuse. She is one of a number of senior Democrat figures who stand accused of operating this old and infirm president in a state of serious mental and physical decline, operating him like a puppet. You know, pulling his strings and actually making the decisions behind his back, you know, in a darkened rooms. Him just being sent out as the figurehead. In other words, a huge deception on the American people. The calls are growing for the people responsible for this abuse of democracy to face justice. Donald Trump is saying something needs to be done here. Jill Biden perhaps may face charges for elder abuse. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary, and expect this story to grow because Donald Trump will fan the flames because he sees it as a way of demonising the Democrats as we go forward towards the next election. And they deserve to be demonised for what they did. What they did was wrong. They pretended. The doctors, at least, they've got to be brought to book. They kept saying, clean bill of health. We could see he wasn't well. We could see his mental faculties were declining fast. Could barely stand up, fell over every 3 minutes. Oh no, he's fine. All the people who said he was fine, all the people who insisted he was firing on all cylinders were lying. They were lying. And there are growing calls in America to bring those people to justice. Something is afoot, folks. We'll talk about that, and also, of course, these bizarre scenes in the Oval Office over the past couple of hours involving the clash of the presidents, America and South Africa. We'll talk to Greg about that as well, and then we'll talk to Elon Musk's dad, in South Africa, Errol Musk, about his take on it. So, but first, let's talk about Lisa Nandy. She's the Culture Secretary. You might call her at the moment cabinet persona non grata. Apparently, other ministers, other cabinet secretaries have accused her of being a bit lazy. Told her that they say that she only puts in 2 or 3 days a week. She denies that. Sure, that's a very unfair allegation, but that's what's being bandied around. So a month or so ago, there was talk she could face the sack. Now that talk has resurfaced, and this time it's not just her that is facing the axe, it's her entire department. They're talking about apparently cancelling, getting rid of, axing the Department of Art, Media and Sport, Culture, Media and Sport, the entire ministry, after 33 years. It would be pretty classically Philistine of this artless government, but let's find out what social commentator James Melville thinks. Hello, James.
Evening, Kevin. You well?
I'm very well. Yeah, Lisa Nandy, people say that she's lazy, she hasn't done any work. Now, I wouldn't know about that, and I'm sure she denies it. They say she only puts in a couple of days a week, maybe 3 at best. Now, I'm sure, again, she probably denies that. But my question would be, what is it that she does do? What does she do? What does the Culture Secretary actually do? I can't see any evidence at all of her doing anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number we could level that accusation. Some maybe are doing too much. They're drunk on power. But what we have, Lisa Nandy's a perfect example. Someone who's been over-promoted and gives off a vibe of an apprentice candidate who'd be sacked in the early stages. I mean,
you're fired.
Yeah. Well, I think she's going to end up that way, and I think others will follow, because look at the poll ratings of Labour. You know, it's not just one thing, it's a number of things. The public have completely lost trust in them. We could go on all day about the reasons why, but one of those reasons is, quite frankly, the front bench is lightweight. I mean, look at them all. I mean, Miliband, you know, Angela Rayner, David Lammy, Lisa Nandy. I mean, we need better than this. But then, you know, the last government were the same as well. I mean, maybe I'm getting old here, but I remember politicians, whether you agreed with them or not, back in the 80s and 90s, who actually stood for something. They were intellectually sound and they were masters of their brief. Now we have a bunch of politicians who look like they're, quite frankly, on a reality TV show. There's a second point regarding that department. I think there is a need for that, because I think a crucial part of our cultural identity and moving forward is things like art and culture. I would, however, separate sport out. I think sport should go into a separate department, but it's about sport, lifestyle, fitness, nutrition, and so on. I think maybe it's time to separate them out, but to get rid of it completely, I don't think that's a good idea. But maybe getting rid of Lisa Nandy might be a good idea.
Yeah, I think it would be sad if the culture ministry, the culture department is axed, because, you know, the arts are important. And that actually, not to get too jingoistic about it, but we're very good at the arts. Quite good at sport as well. Our media is world-renowned as well. Think of the BBC. I mean, OK, it's in decline, but it still has an international reputation to be envied. So we're good at all of this. So I think to cancel the department that runs all of that, that presides over that, would be a step back for this nation. But then again, this Labour government is specialising in steps backwards, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the issue's about where the money's spent. You know, it doesn't really matter what the department is. Just make sure the department's working properly. You know, I've said this before. It's time to have a UK version of Doge, because, you know, there's so much wastage. And the government came in, and yet another broken promise was about to clean up all this mess of misspend, you know, and spaffing away taxpayers' money on, you know, all kinds of egotistical vanity projects and sunken cost fallacies. And there's a lot of that around. It's not just, you know, at government level, filters all the way down to local government level as well. Ultimately, we, the taxpayer, we want return on our investment. We want return on investment in two ways. We want our money to be spent in the right way that help us. But second, we want politicians at all levels who are good at their job and making the right decisions. And we've not even had a year of this Labour government. I mean, I cannot remember a time, and we've got a lot of, you know, other opportunities in terms of to discuss previous governments and their failings, but I can't remember any time where a government has been as unpopular so quickly. And the poll ratings show that. And part of that reason is because we've got a bunch of lightweights on our front bench who seem more intent on getting drunk on power rather than actually genuinely fulfilling the pledges which they've now broken in their manifesto.
Absolutely, and Lisa Nandy exemplifies the weakness of these untalented front benchers. This is the Culture Secretary, in case you hadn't noticed, a woman. And a socialist, a left-leaning person who believes in human rights, who very much opposes violence against women, who backed the International Olympic Committee's decision to allow blokes, biological men, to beat the hell out of women in the boxing ring in the Olympics. She backs the IOC's decision to allow men to continue to compete against women. She said, oh, it's up to them. They should make the decision sport by sport. I'd like more of a principled stand from our Culture Secretary. I'd also like her to have done something by now about the extraordinary descent into anti-Semitic bias at the BBC. She's in charge of that. Not a word have we heard from her about what's going on at the Beeb. This anti-Israel rhetoric that has consumed its newsroom to a disgusting extent. That's what I'd like to see a bit of from our Culture Secretary, that sort of thing. But what have we seen from her? Absolutely nothing.
It's just nothing at all. I mean, you know, they are doing a lot of things. It's like a hollow Easter egg. You know, you crack it and there's nothing there.
Oh, no.
There's not even a bag of sweeties. There's nothing. And so you've got government who are doing things, but they're doing the wrong things. And you've also got government that seems, this government, wrapped up in wokery. Now, there is a zeitgeist that is you know, kind of almost like the Overton window has changed here. And I think Nigel Farage is tapping into that. I think people are sick of this sort of nonsense. And what they want is actually governments with a bit more common sense and, more importantly, understanding the mood and the concerns of the people. And I think whether you like them or loathe them, Farage is really tapping into that. And this Labour government are heading in the wrong direction. They're going down darkened alleyways of wokeism. Net zero is a perfect example. And they're not standing up in terms of two things. Their core beliefs, whether you agree with them or not, but they're also getting entrapped by a mentality of wokeism that most people in the country are absolutely sick of. I think there's a multitude of problems with this Labour government, but that is one of them. Yeah. Nandi's a perfect example. Someone's been over-promoted, trapped in wokery, but then
she really is. She's a real woke warrior, lost in woke
What's she done, though?
Nothing, as I say, nothing. I can't see anything. I've always thought, I mean, she seems like a nice enough lady, but I've always thought she's a sort of mysteriously overrated, very bland. But then again, you could say that about pretty much the entire Labour front bench right now.
Yeah, completely. I mean, look at Ed Miliband. I mean, he's just a master in terms of crankery. And so you've got Ed Miliband, who is pushing the direction of the country in hideous ways with his net zero claptrap, which most of the country don't actually want. You've got a prime minister who's flipping around all over the place, tearing up,
betraying Brexit.
Yeah, I mean, well, but also on immigration, he's pivoted from a lifelong career.
James, I don't know if you were, I've got to go in a second, but if you weren't listening to the show earlier, we're getting reports that the number of migrants that came across the channel today is 820. It's the top number for the year. So that crisis is spiralling out of control, as are so many other crises under this incompetent government. James, I've got to go now, but great to talk to you. Come on again soon for much longer. James Melville there, social commentator. When we come back, Greg Swenson in America on Donald Trump. Stand by.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the final hour of a very eventful political asylum tonight. We've got 60 sizzling minutes still to go. In just a little while, we'll go across, I think, to Chicago. I can never quite tell where he is, but Chicago is his hometown, so we'll hope to speak to Greg Swenson there in just literally a couple of minutes. We need to talk about what's just gone on in the Oval Office, this extraordinary clash between Donald Trump and the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. We'll talk about that. But we also need to talk about these growing calls. Greg and I discussed it the other night, but I think it's becoming a very big story for those who covered up for President Biden's health, those who covered up the fact that he was in a serious state of mental and physical decline. There are serious calls for them to be brought to justice, to face the full force of the American law. And Jill Biden is apparently potentially facing charges of elder abuse for forcing her husband to carry on when he clearly wasn't up to the job. What about the doctors? The doctors who kept giving this old geezer a clean bill of health. No, he's fine, firing on all cylinders. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. Remember when, after that calamitous TV debate last June, wasn't it, when we discovered just how bad a state Joe Biden was in? Absolutely. I could say he was annihilated by Donald Trump in that live TV debate, but he wasn't really. He annihilated himself because he couldn't put a sentence together. He just had lost his marbles. It was clear at the end of that. Jill Biden leapt on, shouted at all the Democrat supporters, "Didn't he do well? He answered all the questions. Yeah, you need to do a little bit more than that." And by the way, Jill, he didn't. Extraordinary. So let's go over now to Greg. I think he's in Chicago. Am I right, Greg?
That's right, Kevin.
OK, good to have you on board again, mate. In a little while after you, you'll be thrilled to hear I'm going to be talking to Elon Musk's father, Errol, about what just happened in the... what just happened? That's got a ring to it. What just happened in the Oval Office. Well, let's play a bit of it. I mean, you must have picked up on this massive row between Trump and the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa. Well, let's just have a quick look at it and we'll discuss it afterwards.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would. And turn the lights down. Turn the lights down and just put this on. It's right behind you. Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yeah. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are.
Now this is very bad. These are burial sites right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers, and those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning. Each one of those white things you see is a cross, and there's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. And those cars aren't driving, they're stopped there to pay respects to their family member who was killed. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it. Both sides of the road you have crosses. Those people were all killed.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? No, I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen. But okay.
I mean, it's in South Africa. That's where.
It's in South Africa, that's for damn sure. But my God, Greg, it all goes on in the Oval Office, doesn't it? The funniest thing about that bizarre confrontation was that standing in the sidelines in the Oval Office, and for me this was funny, was the very famous South African golfer, Ernie Els, multiple major winner, who looked like, what am I doing here? What the hell am I doing here? But what do you think was going on here? This was a staged ambush. Obviously Trump and probably Elon Musk as well, who of course is originally South African, feels strongly about what's been happening in South Africa. They say there's been a genocide of white farmers. But why would you think that, and there's a strong case to support that, something has been going wrong in terms of the fate of white farmers in South Africa. But why would you think that Trump would want to ambush Cyril Ramaphosa with this video and stage this kind of performance?
Well, I think, the president is just annoyed with what's happening there. And we had, and he's very transparent. He's not afraid to call it out, say it like it is. And I think there was definitely some news here last week, Kevin, when the administration, or at least the government, was allowing some of the white farmers asylum status in the United States. And so as much as President Trump is against illegal migration, he was giving asylum status, and it must have gotten up to his level for him to know about the situation there. There's two of these brutal attacks per week, or per day, and then 2 actual homicides a week. So look, I think black on black crime is a much bigger issue that should be dealt with in South Africa. I'm not suggesting that, this is only white people that are suffering. I think, in fact, the number of farmer homicides are below the percentage of the population that they represent. But that doesn't make it good. If you're especially a farmer that's being slaughtered in front of your husband or your wife. I mean, it's really disgusting, the brutality of these homicides and these attacks. It's kind of like October 7th level, just absolutely grotesque. And so, for the president to bring it up, for all the complaints that he's an isolationist and he's only cares about America, that's not true. He's been quite the diplomat in his second term. And you saw how he did in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the UAE, as well as what he's been doing in the Oval Office with visitors.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, there's a sort of cultural divide here as well. Don't forget, South Africa is one of the nations that went to the International Court of Criminal Justice to try to establish that America's great friend Israel was guilty of genocide and was kicked straight out of court because it was a fatuous case. But it does prove that there's a certain antagonism, a cultural divide between South Africa and America.
And you don't have to look very far. You just look at Zimbabwe. In 1980, 75% of the arable land in Zimbabwe was being farmed. 5 years ago, it was down to 4%. So I think what President Trump is afraid of is that this nationalizing movement, nationalizing farms, is going to end up causing starvation for the South African people. So, he's just trying to head this off now rather than wait till later and have, massive migration out of South Africa, even though right now there's massive migration into South Africa. They're putting themselves in a very difficult spot.
And purely speculatively, of course, might we presume that possibly South African-born Elon Musk had whispered in the president's ear?
It wouldn't shock me. You'll have to ask his father.
I intend to. Don't worry about that.
I've been on with him a few times. He's really charming and really, really good guy, and says it like it is. Yeah. So we'll await Errol Musk's verdict with great interest. Well, let's return to the subject that we talked about the other night, but I do believe the momentum behind this is building fast. It is the growing calls for those who covered up for Joe Biden's clear mental and physical decline when he was president, when he was the puppet president, to be brought to justice. There are even now suggestions that Dr.
Jill Biden.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I've got to get that in. She's a doctor of education. By the way, I saw some of the letters she wrote as a doctor of education about DEI in the White House. And as a doctor of education, she should really brush up on her spelling and grammar. But that's another issue. But Dr. Jill Biden may well face charges of elder abuse because the implication, the allegation is she was at the forefront of this shady group of senior Democrats who effectively used Joe Biden as a puppet to bring about their own policies. That this guy, we've learned, you couldn't really talk to him apart from vaguely between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Apart from that, he wasn't at the races, and even then, not particularly good. We could see his physical decline, we could see his mental decline, and there were clearly Democrats, senior Democrats, basically putting him out before the TV cameras while they made the policy. That, if true, is an egregious deception on the American people. And the doctors, at least, who kept giving him a clean bill of health, they should be brought to book. They weren't telling the truth, were they?
No, they weren't. And look, this was a convergence of Joe Biden on one hand, who had a massive ego and also is a bad guy. I'm sorry about his cancer diagnosis, and I'm sorry he's going through some cognitive issues the last 5 or 10 years, but he's a bad guy. So you combine a bad guy with a big ego who wants to be like LBJ and FDR and thinks he has that mandate, which he didn't. And then you have a cabal of people around him who've been really basically sucking off of him for the last 15 years. Kevin O'Connor, his doctor, massive cover-up. He's basically a paid liar for the White House. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, and Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, they should be ashamed of themselves. They've been with Biden for years. They worked with him, when he was vice president. They saw the decline. They worked with him in the 4 years of the first Trump administration in the Chinese-backed think tank that Biden ran. And so, these guys are bad guys. Anthony Blinken called the CIA and fabricated that whole 51 former intelligence officers think that the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian disinformation. That was Anthony Blinken. So all of these guys had pictures, the phrase, they have pictures of Biden. Nobody could get fired from that administration. They were all in on the scam, but Biden also knew if he fired anybody, they would rat him out.
Well, I just don't think he had the wherewithal. I don't think he was thinking like that. I barely think he was thinking at all. And you say that these people, all the string pullers, the puppet masters, who literally ran that guy like a marionette, just sent him out for the cameras and said to him, please, Joe, try not to fall over. Something that he rarely achieved. He usually did fall over. Feeling ashamed of themselves may well soon be the least of their problems, because I think that Donald Trump, I think he probably feels a genuine sense of injustice about this, but also he can see a political opportunity here. Yeah. He's going to feed this. He's going to feed the flames of this as much as he can. And in fact, only yesterday said, and I thought this was really interesting. He said, it's terrible what happened to poor old Joe Biden. The old Joe Biden would never have allowed that migrant crisis to unfold, would never have allowed all this mad wokery, would never have allowed America to decline as far as... The old Joe Biden would never have done that. Now, that's not what he thinks. He's saying it because he's saying he stopped being as powerful mentally and physically as he used to be, and therefore he declined. So he's letting this happen. I think he senses if he can get Blinken, or even better, Dr. Jill Biden into the dock, this is political gold for the Republicans. The Democrats will be utterly demonized by the next election. Let me just play you a little couple of examples of the defense of the Joe Biden realm that went on, particularly by his wife. Here is Dr. Jill defending her husband's health.
Since you left office, there have been a number of books that have come out, deeply sourced from Democratic sources, that claim in your final year there was a dramatic decline in your cognitive abilities. in the final year of your presidency. What is your response to these allegations, or are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that.
I saw him all throughout the day, and I did not create a cocoon around him. I mean, you saw him in the Oval Office. You saw him making speeches. He wasn't hiding somewhere. I didn't have him, you know, sequestered in some place. I mean, that's
Wish you had.
Yeah, they sequestered him in the basement during the campaign, didn't they? Listen, this is even more absurd. This is Jill Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, after that calamitous TV debate. Do you remember this? This is unbelievable.
Oh, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lie!
Jeez. Didn't you? I mean, you know, it's blatant, isn't it? Where he answered every question. He's the president. That's the least he could do. And by the way, he didn't answer every question. He made a complete fool of himself. Didn't you see Dr. Jill enjoying a friendly lunch the other day in Los Angeles just after her husband, we learned, was suffering from terminal prostate cancer?
I did, yeah. I bumped into her in the Bel Air Hotel. She was having lunch with friends. She looked like she was having a grand old time, and everything was great. So I guess it's hard to have a bad time lunching outdoors at the Bel Air. But yeah, she was. I think she. Well, I know she spoke at the Milken conference, and so she was probably just you know, spending a little time on the coast without Joe. But I think, you know, Kevin, those were like really humiliating moments for her and for President Biden, and it just shows you that, you know, how just cruel she was. I mean, she savaged the reputations of Robert Hur and Dean Phillips and her staff. You know, according to the book, anyway, were basically ensuring that Biden didn't even interact with the White House residence staff because she didn't want any leaks about his cognitive challenges. So they kept a really tight circle around. And then you had that, you know, cabal of 6 or 8 people in the White House, in the West Wing, that were in on the scam. And, you know, yeah, I hope some of them, you know, get some heat or even have some, I hope to see some investigations. I'm not sure anybody's going to go after Dr. Jill, but definitely they should go after Ron Klain and Merrick Garland. And, you know, Merrick Garland had the Robert Hur tapes, claims he didn't listen to them. That's funny. Yeah. And you know, this was a bad week. I think, you know, you had the book coming out Tuesday. You had the Robert Hur audio released over the weekend. And then, of course, you had the cancer diagnosis, which was announced to try to deflect attention away from the Robert Hur audio tapes as well as the book. And it failed. It backfired. Now everybody's talking about it, and they're talking about the cover-up, the great cover-up, rather than poor Joe's cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, the guy's got an aggressive form of prostate cancer. But by the way, that is at the center of the charges of the deception of the American people, because they announced it as if it's just happened. Oh my God, we've got this terrible news. Well, and all the doctors, medical experts just say, well, look, this form of prostate cancer he must have had for years. Yeah. You know, he must have had it while he was the president. They're suddenly announcing as if it's new, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So, you know, there's a can of worms being opened here, and I think it's going to emerge as the big story going forward, because apart from the fact it's got veracity, they clearly did cover up for the most powerful man in the world not being remotely up to the job. Well, that's a disgrace. But also, I think it's true. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But also Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to spot a political opportunity here. Going forward, the more they can bang this drum, the more the Democrats are going to look bad at the next election.
Yeah, they really will. I'm not sure anybody that was involved in the White House in Washington is going to be, you know, able to distance themselves from this. So, you know, his cabinet, I think they're finished. You know, I can't imagine how anyone could recover, you know, like Pete Buttigieg, who has, you know, is aspiring to run for president in 2028. I just don't see it, because granted, Biden did not have cabinet meetings for sometimes 12 months at a time. That's really bizarre.
12 months.
they should have called him out on it. They should have, insisted that they have some sort of dialogue. Apparently, this clown show in the White House, they were making very large economic decisions, significant economic decisions, without consulting Janet Yellen, who is the Secretary of the Treasury. I mean, this is a really bad group of people. And again, I don't want to just, distract from the problems that Biden had. I mean, he was, as I said earlier, a bad guy with a massive ego. He did come into the White House and he was behind a lot of the stupidity, the Green New Deal, for example, the reckless spending. Yeah. But as time went on, arguably the last 2 years for sure, he was not in charge. It was this cabal. But, look, I think this isn't picking on Joe, although we're doing a pretty good job of that. And I think Dr. Jill will get a pass because she can claim that she was just looking after her husband, even though she lies about it constantly, and has recently. But I do think it's
the others, the political string pullers.
Annie Thompson, Mike Dillon, Steve Ricchetti. These are bad people.
Yeah, these guys should be losing some sleep right now. They really should. It's going to be interesting going forward, Greg. I've got to move on because, if you can, stay tuned because I'm going to talk to Elon's dad in just a second. Great to talk to you, and we'll see you back in good old Britain very soon, I hope. That's Greg Swenson. Let's go to break. Next up, it's Errol Musk, Elon's dad, all the way from South Africa. Let's find out what he made of this extraordinary theatre in the Oval Office at the White House earlier today. So that next, stay tuned.
BBC decide this is going to be our star. We're going to aim this person at this audience. With Russell Brand, he was a comedian. It was at young people. With Stacey Solomon, it's at young mums. With Gary Lineker, it was with football dads, centrist dads, and so on. They build these people up. And what happens is that the authority and the power transfers from the BBC to that individual. And the BBC create monsters, and they have no control over these people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Welcome back. We're waiting on the line. Really pleased to have got him in the end. It's Elon Musk's father, Errol Musk. Welcome, Errol.
Thank you.
If you bear with us, can we just remind the audience, and maybe me, of what happened in the Oval Office a couple of hours ago? So we're going to play this extraordinary theatre in the White House. So we'll come back after that.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would, and turn the lights down, and just put it on. It's right behind you. Johan.
There's nothing this Parliament can do with or without you. People are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yeah. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are.
Now this is very bad. These are burial sites right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers, and those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning. Each one of those white things you see is a cross, and there's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. And those cars aren't driving, they're stopped there to pay respects to their family member who was killed. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it. Both sides of the road you have crosses. Those people were all killed.
Have they told you where that is, Mr. President? No, I'd like to know where that is, because this I've never seen. But okay.
I mean, it's in South Africa. That's
well, Errol, what did you make of that? I've just spoken to our American friend Greg Swenson, and I said, well, why did the president do that, President Trump? Why did he ambush Cyril Ramaphosa with that video? And Greg said just this, that the president is upset and annoyed about what has been happening to white farmers in South Africa. Would you agree with that interpretation of why Trump did that?
Well, yes, I think what he did was the best possible thing that he could have done. First of all, it's not 1,000 farmers, it's over 4,000 farmers. There's over 4,000 crosses there, not 1,000. And it comes from a population that is pretty sparse. It's not as though it comes from a population of millions. It comes from a population that is really quite small. And so in that respect, it could be considered as genocide. And doing this has highlighted the reality of the situation here in South Africa. And this Ramaphosa going there thinking that he's going to go along again and get his his pity, help us, give us money and everything. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to get any money because that's what they're there for. Another easy thing to try and get things for nothing. No, this was terrific. It couldn't have been better. They could have focused on other things like the terrible BEE requirements, but that would have taken away the shine of this. No, this has got to be one of the most extraordinary, unprecedented things that could ever have happened in the Oval Office.
Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa, pleaded ignorance. Oh, I don't know anything about this. Do you know where this happened? Is he ignorant of what's happening to white Afrikaner farmers over there in South Africa? Do you believe him that he had no idea about this video? No idea?
No, of course not. I mean, on the other hand, they are so little interested in their own people. This is the ANC, so-called top echelon or whatever it is. They're so little interested in their own people anyway, that is their own black people. They couldn't care less for their own black people. Whatever happens or suffering they undergo, they couldn't give a darn about that. No, let's call a spade a spade. So the fact that he says he doesn't know where this is, well, you know, if you're the president of a country and this is such a serious subject, and out of a very small population of people, over 4,000 have been gruesomely murdered. And over this last weekend, another 5, by the way. You know, it just shows you, you know, does he really honestly, you know, it's like a schoolboy who broke a window and at the school, and he's called in by the headmaster saying, "Did you throw the stone?" And he says, "Oh, no."
So is that schoolboy excuses? So you were just indicating there, Errol, that this, what President Trump called genocide, certainly the murder of mainly white Afrikaner farmers for their land, that is going on as we speak?
Yes, it's going on as we speak. It's not just Afrikaners, it's white people. You know, one talks about white Afrikaners, but the South African population is you know, I'm 2/3 Dutch, South African Dutch myself. I speak English, but I mean, it's our people. These decent people who are actually trying to farm and produce food. And South African food is very well produced, and it's very good quality. And you know, take that away, and these people will all starve. But the top echelon of the ANC, they couldn't care less. You know, they've already got their apartments in Switzerland, and they've got their, you know, places in their Manhattan apartments and such like. They've got all that set up. So we don't, you know, they're not too worried about it. So this bumpkin Ramaphosa went there thinking he's going to get a very easy time, and he's not going to get anything of the kind. And he thought he was going to smile his way through and do the thing that politicians do with each other. Let's talk about it around a table. Let's not look at the facts. Let's just look at it, talk about it around a table. No. This was a terrific situation that happened tonight. For the first time, some light on a terrible subject.
And why do they do it, Errol? Is it purely a racial thing?
Well, I would say they are encouraged by the different factions. South Africa has about 11 different black tribes. And, you know, the biggest ones being Zulus and Xhosas. And among themselves, they're encouraging each other to do these kind of things. You saw that. The one was the MK doing it, and the other one was this Malema's group. And, you know, they are encouraging their people to do this. Now, so you have to presume on that score that it's political. On the other hand, I would say that there's no more police here. We used to have a very effective police force in South Africa, as good as any other place in the world, as good as England anyway. And we don't have any police anymore. So the police are gone. So we have a sort of smidgen of police. Yeah. And a lot of the time the police are implicated in the crimes. So, you know, farm dwellers, especially the older people, the older farmers and wives are easy targets, very easy targets for them to come and, you know, smash and grab and take whatever they can. And then in the process, you know, decapitate the farmer and his wife. I mean, it's just really not funny anymore, you know. It
doesn't sound like fun. In terms of President Trump broaching this issue, do you think that your son Elon may have played a part, whispered in his ear, you ought to confront this Ramaphosa guy with this genocide that's going on, or the alleged genocide?
Well, you know, I've been attacked on a farm. In my case, the attackers didn't come off so well, you know. So I sort of dispatched 3 of them, and the rest are still running. I think they must be in Cairo by now. But at any rate, yeah, no, Elon knows about the situation. Obviously, he keeps abreast of the situation. He's a smart boy, and but he's been in America for 35 years. Yeah. So his focus is on America. But of course, he remembers South Africa. He remembers when he was here, we had very good law and order. Children could go to school on their bicycles. Mm-hmm. Children could walk to school. You can't do that anymore. So, I imagine he put in his 2 cents there.
By the way, Errol, I'm just being told, you just talked about when they came to you, you had a confrontation, and you said you dispatched 3 of them. Yes. Did they meet their maker? Did you kill them?
Sorry?
Did you kill them? And what happened to those 3 guys that you confronted with? You talked about them coming to you.
Yes, I was about my small daughter was 6 years of age at the time, and I went to a home on a farm that I had, which I was painting out for renting. And after the painters left, I found about 8 of these characters came into the house and promptly started shooting at us, and I was armed. So they fired 52 rounds at me. We picked up 52 shells from their weapons. I fired 2 rounds, and I killed 3 of them.
My God. Is South Africa becoming, particularly for white people, but I assume generally for law-abiding citizens, is it becoming a frightening place to live?
Well, yes, it definitely is. Not good anymore, because the ANC has driven the economy so badly into the ground that we no longer are really we're like a junk setup now, as they call it, economically speaking. They've just driven the economy, they've misappropriated funds. The corruption is out of control. They don't do any maintenance. There's no forward planning. There are no more government departments functioning properly, if at all. And yes, it's reaching a crisis level, I would say. Definitely. There's no longer a tax base that's sufficient to support the government. Right. I mean, there's 7 million people out of 63 million people in the country that have a job. So,
that is not a good recipe for a strong and stable country, is it? Listen, Errol, really good to talk to you. I've got to move on because the show's coming towards the end. I gather you're coming in our direction. Is it next week at some point? Coming this way?
Yes, all right. I've been asked to speak at Oxford Union.
Wow.
Next Thursday.
Okay. Well, if you're in London, let's have a drink, yeah?
Thank you.
And really good to talk to you. Thank you so much, Errol. That's Errol Musk over there in South Africa. Now, we should stress the President Trump, accused or alleged there's genocide going on. Officially, that cannot be substantiated, but clearly the situation is not good. People are being murdered, very often white farmers, for their land. And as Errol was saying, the situation in ANC-controlled South Africa is becoming more and more frightening by the day. Extraordinary scenes. Let's go to break. When we come back, more of your messages, phone calls and WhatsApp voice notes. 20 minutes still to go, so stick around.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Going to go to the phones in just a minute, read some of your messages and, of course, play your WhatsApp voice notes. But we were just talking about those bizarre scenes, that theatre in the Oval Office at the White House as Donald Trump clashed with the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, he was asked by a journalist in the office at that time, a little later, about this Qatari plane, the Air Force One plane from Qatar, which, to my surprise, America is going to accept. So it is going to be Air Force One. He's going to take that gift from Qatar. He was asked about this, and this is what happens if you're a journalist in Washington and you get on the wrong side of the Donald.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced that it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about?
What are you talking
about? You know, you to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing, go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible, the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace.
Ah, dear, there's only one Donald Trump. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. When he said that you are a terrible journalist, if I had a quid for every time someone had said that to me, I'd be a millionaire, a multi-millionaire. But let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Paul in Liverpool. Hi, Paul.
Yeah, hi, Kev. Just about the ladies in jail, for the tweets and so on.
Yeah, Lucy Connolly.
I used to think, the UK and America were good democracies and Russia was the bad guy, and they would, and I'm starting to think now, the UK and then America, the way they treated Donald Trump with the lawfare, and it's like everyone's underhanded. And I like I said to the lady, the researcher there, I said, at least in Russia they just shoot you, Here, it's underhanded, it's behind closed doors. He says do this and that. And it's horrible. I mean, I'd rather live in Russia now.
Well, I know what you're getting at, Paul. I don't know how old you are, but I'm getting on a bit, and I can remember the time. I can remember the time when, you felt about America, the Western democracies, America, Britain, that they were underpinned by a basic sense of decency, common sense and decency, and now you sense that all the filthy tricks that that are played in places like Russia and North Korea and God knows where, the assaults on freedom, the assaults on democracy, the manipulation, the lying to the people that happen in those awful tyrannical states, in those dictatorships, are happening here, and they're happening in America. You're right, I know exactly what you're saying.
Kev, it's happening here and in America, but it's done in such a clever, snide, creepy, really, really low, underhanded way. It's like, you know what? I'd rather live in Russia and you can shoot me.
Yeah,
because at least you're not going to jail for 30, 40 years. Or it's horrible now.
Absolutely. Yeah, with you, Paul. We're on the same page. Thanks for another great call. Paul in Liverpool there. Let's play a WhatsApp voice note. This is Chris on Lucy Connolly.
Hi, Kevin. Starmer's an outright liar. All of this, her jailed for 31 months, not given bail, is all part of a side war to make people think before they speak or before they post. It's controlling the narrative, making sure that people don't speak out. It was hurting words. It wasn't incitement. Starmer is making this country a disgrace.
Yeah, I know, you're right. That is a really good point, Chris, that these tough sentences, these ludicrous, grotesquely disproportionate sentences that were handed down to many of the protesters didn't do much, holding placards, oh, you got 2 years, that kind of thing. Some of them deserved what they got. You can't throw bricks at the police, you can't try to set fire to mosques or asylum seeker hotels, that kind of thing. The violent ones, I can accept that they deserved their punishment, but most of them didn't, and certainly not as much as they got. And the 12 people who went to jail for posting nasty words on social media should not be in jail. But as Chris is saying, the message is you watch out, you watch your step, you step out of line, you voice opinions that the government don't like, you're going to jail. That is what it's about. It is the killing, the slow death of freedom of speech. A couple of messages here. This is from Sarah in Belfast. Lisa Nandy wasn't presenting the awards at the F1 at Silverstone last year. It was the Science and Technology Minister, Peter Kyle, instead. It did occur to me at the time, doesn't she like F1? Is that she just doesn't feel like going? Yeah, well, there you can. It's probably a bit of both, really. And Lisa Price asked, did Joe Biden not give his whole family lifelong pardons against any possible future charges? Yes, indeed he did. Whether or not he was compos mentis at the time is a moot point. Here, what else we got here? By the way, it looks like Spurs are going to beat Man United in the Europa Cup final over in Bilbao. Oh, my God. Spurs are the worst team I saw all year. They really were. Mind you, Man United weren't much better. But that would be an interesting result. How did they both make the final of the Europa League? Extraordinary. This is from Matt. I hope Lisa Nandy is on her way out. Always sounds like she has a mouthful of pasty when she talks. But then again, most of the Labour cabinet are vocally challenged. Stuttering Starmer, Zippy Rees, Chavi Rayner and David Lammy, who may sound normal at first, but listen to him for 5 minutes and you'll wonder if he was repeatedly dropped on his head as a baby. I don't wonder. It must be true. There must be an explanation for that guy. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Philip in South Wales. Hi, Philip. Hello, Philip. Are you there?
Hi, Tab. Brilliant show.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm here. Brilliant show.
Thank you. You want to talk about Starmer, yeah?
Yeah. What I'd like to say. Yeah, Keir Starmer, probably now the most hated person in the UK.
I agree. Well, he's certainly up there. He's certainly up there.
Probably, yeah. He's probably, yeah. And I predicted in the last election that the Labour Party would get 400 seats.
You're pretty much right, weren't you?
They're all.
Yeah.
Right. Now, they would be lucky to get 100 seats.
Yeah.
If there was an election tomorrow, they would be lucky to get 100 seats.
Yeah, I know. They're heading for
worse now than the Tories.
Yeah, they're heading for a kind of oblivion, but the trouble is we've got to wait 4 years for that, and that's going to be too long. Philip, good point. Thank you for calling. Philip in South Wales there. Let's take another WhatsApp voice note. This is Tristan on Lucy Connolly again.
Hi, Kevin. From what Keir Starmer is doing, he is lying all the time. He needs to be called out. He's a pathological liar. And after what he said about Lucy Connolly, I mean, that's just unbelievable. Saying that he never heard about it. He lies about everything. The hatred for this government, for this man, is just unbelievable. I hate them, absolutely hate them. They're a disgrace to this country, a disgrace.
Well, your depth of emotion is shared by an increasing number of people. It is extraordinary how many people are really getting personally furious about this guy. How can you tell when Keir Starmer is lying? His lips move. Let's go to break. When we come back, more of your calls, and Petri Hoskin will be in a little while to tell you what she's got lined up for your entertainment from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. You won't want to miss that. Stick around.
What the hell is English culture?
Well, there's your problem. How do you not know what... It's sense of fair play. It's our democratic values. It's equality. It's freedom of speech. That is such a big part of English/British culture. I think that is kind of in our DNA, actually. Yeah.
Because Pakistanis and Indians famously don't do fair play. It just makes...
Sorry, are you under any illusion about how politics is run in both India and Pakistan? Are you under an illusion about the level of corruption involved in both of those countries' political systems?
The point is...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Quick text from Angela regarding today's 820 more illegal migrants. She says, more upsetting is the audacity of the border force in making the occupants of the flotilla of boats move out of the way whilst they were sailing across the channel in honour of those soldiers who set off to France and never came back. It's horrific and a national bloody disgrace, and thanks for nothing, France. I take your point, Angela. Technically, they were sailing from Ramsgate in Kent, not to honour the soldiers who went to France and never came back, but the soldiers that were stuck in France on the Dunkirk beach, and this incredible flotilla of little ships, little sailing boats, dinghies, whatever, all went across the channel and picked up all of our soldiers and brought them back in the most miraculous evacuation. You may have seen the movie. So to celebrate them coming back, not going there. But your point is well taken. Quickly, a last WhatsApp voice note. Sean on Donald Trump.
Good evening, Kevin. I think what Trump did, the South African president, was genius. And I personally wish he'd done the same to Starmer with Lucy Connolly. I really wish that he had pulled up the tweet and said, is this really worthy of that many months, years in prison? Because he wouldn't be able to deny that he knows about it at that point.
Yeah, and you remember Trump in the Oval of, I'm a great believer in freedom of speech. No, Keir, you are the killer of freedom of speech. If you lock people up for tweets, you are no believer in freedom of speech. Trust me, trust me. Let's quickly go back to the phones. Let's talk to Daryl in Lincoln. Hi, Daryl.
Hello, Kevin. How are you doing? All right?
I'm all right, mate. What would you like to say?
Well, I had a conversation with Nigel Farage when he was the leader of UKIP many years ago.
Yep.
And my point to him at the time was, and he took it on board, to be fair to him, and agreed with me, but this is the only country in the world where you can come here as a migrant, totally unskilled in anything, and you can get a job in a low-paid, minimum wage, like factory worker or land worker or something like that. You can't do that in any other country in the world because they save those jobs for the people of their country.
Well, you can't do it on the scale that it happens here. I mean, it does happen around the world, but not on the scale that happens in Britain, because successive governments, going back to the Tories in particular, have imported literally millions of migrants to do cheap labour because they think it's good for the economy. But it's not.
It's idiocy, really, because, I mean, if we've got so many million unemployed British people in this country that are claiming benefits, what our government should be doing is encouraging those people to do those low-paid jobs, and they should say to them, OK, you need X amount of money a month to survive, so you do the job, and then we will help you in other ways, such as housing benefit and rent and so on and so forth, to encourage people, British people, to do those jobs. And it would stop migrants come into this country.
I mean, maybe. But the trouble is you can't persuade people to do jobs they don't want to do. And if you have a benefit system, a welfare system like ours, it encourages people not to work. It's more lucrative to claim benefits. There's your problem, Darryl. I take your point. Completely agree. Darryl in Lincoln there. That's about it. I'm sorry for all of you others waiting on the lines, but we've got to end the show. Thank you for all your messages and all your WhatsApp voice notes and all your lovely phone calls. Petri Hoskin is in the studio. What do you got for us tonight, Petri?
Cyber attacks after the CEO of a huge bank says he lies awake every night in fear of the banks, the attacks against the banks. And how do we protect ourselves? I mean, I went online and took a photograph of my bank, of what money is in my account, because if